sign in for me, please. I appreciate it. All right. Evening, everybody. Joint meeting of the Planning and Development Subcommittee and Town Council meeting Thursday, April 27, 2023, 6 p.m. in the Veterans Room. Agenda item number 1, roll call. Councilor Dow. Here. Councilor Lazo. Here. Catherine. Here. Dee Dee. Here. Dave. Councilor Adams. All present. We have a quorum. Agenda item number 2, consider and accept the Planning and Development meeting minutes of April 19, 2023. Do the first and second, please.
So
second. Okay. Discussion? Questions? Anything? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous, all present. Number 3, review 2024 economic development budget in the amount of $15,250.94 and entertain a motion to vote to submit to council as presented.
So moved.
Thank you.
A second.
Yes, ma'am. You need me to change that?
No, I don't know.
You weren't. You were not, right? Oh, you're okay. You can still vote on it. Yeah. Good to go, though. Not bad.
Like you said.
I'll put a 401. There you go. Make yourselves feel better. All right. All right, Ms. Dean.
So as you see from the nominal total, right, of 15,000, or rolls up to $15,250. We charge 100% of the CDBG coordinator's position to the block grant, and we are this year starting to charge 90% of my position to the block grant. We previously were charging some random percentage of 87% and 13%, and so I'm shifting the percentages just for sake of ease. So it'll be 90 to the block grant, 10% to the town, hence the decrease. With regards to the salaries, I have budgeted it. Should the town council consider wanting to move me to a different position? So I initially had it budgeted for my current position and was advised by Adriana to go ahead and budget for the position. And so it's there, should you make that decision. And if not, then you would just want to decrease it by, it's just a few $1,000s. The difference between the two positions is just a few $1,000s. And the purpose would be to increase my title, and then it would help me move into a position where I have the step increases. I would argue that I've been doing well beyond what a director position might be doing for a department, especially in light of recent things happening, like with the, having to pull together the right-of-way for the tip and these other things that are even outside of my regular scope. With regards to the other expenses, we're asking for $5,000 for civil space. There was a note inside of my CDBG application that highlighted administrative costs need to be determined by the town to be majority CDBG. And if they're not, how can the town justify it? And so we just took on civil space 2 years ago, funded by CDBG. However, I'm only using 1/4 of it for CDBG. The other is for things that are not funded by the block grant. So the McCann Fields, the EDA rail trail project, the mock grant, we're about to put on the urban agenda grant. So I would argue that we should be funding it through the town to ensure that we're, in good graces with DHCD. And so then you'll see when you get to Eric's budget, what had been traditionally budgeted inside of economic development was the mapping. And so that was a $4,000 expense every year. That's now being moved over to Eric. That blew his percentages out.
3,000.
3,2,900%.
$3,000.
I'm doing my best.
We would budget $4,000. We would spend $3,000 on the software. And so now we're budgeting $5,000. And I think that this finally corrects what probably should have been under planning all the while. But the reason it happened was because we didn't have a planner up until, 5 years ago? Yeah. And so I think it just traditionally landed under, Sandy Ackley was all things economic development and planning. And there wasn't this position where you could then put those expenses. So now we're just trying to write that, as Eric would say, right? Just a one-time correction. And then with regards to the other expenses, pretty self-explanatory. Conferences and meetings is my recertifying my procurement purchasing classes, MCPPO classes, and then our dues and subscriptions. So I think we have probably one of the smallest budgets in town, besides some of the boards, committees, commissions.
Questions? So I want to clarify real quick on the civil space. So we're going up to 5,000. Nothing is funded through CDBG at all.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you use it quite often too.
And if I could, I'll just give a quick highlight. So CDBG over the last, since I've been here 4 years, has been used for a lot of the downstairs office expenses. And we actually increased the amount we're covering, for instance, for printing and computers. Most of those will get covered by the block grant. And then, so we're constantly offsetting those expenses down there.
Another question to you real quick is, CDBG obviously covers other positions within the town, inspector's office and stuff like that. Normally, I noticed that it's missing this year. Last year, we've asked for it to be put into the, so we know what the CDBG funds are, even though it's not for the regular operating budget. It was just to see where the CDBG funds were going. What's your breakdown of like the percentage of what you're funding with CDBG real quick?
So we have what's called a housing rehab specialist we'll be hiring this year. And that's going to be for the new housing rehab. Remembering that this next block grant is a 2-year block grant, so it doesn't line up with our fiscal years. Gets a little bit confusing. We have a health inspector paid at 60% and a building inspector paid at 100%. And because again, these don't go by year to year, we just have the percentages I have for the entire grant. And if anyone's interested in seeing those numbers, I can provide them.
I will. Any other questions? Yeah, Gus. Councilor Steve.
Mike Julian brought up the building inspector when he was here. And I was curious if you could give us a little more detail on what the process is to actually hire this person, because that person's been in limbo for at least 2 years now.
Sure.
So are we
to
actually
make
going
sure.
to see this person sometime in the near future?
So I just recommend this is something that we could discuss, if you don't mind, Councilor Steves, later on instead of the budget. The hiring process, I think, maybe bring Mike in and yourself and the town manager, if you don't mind, Councilor Steves.
I just wanted to get a clarification of dates, basically.
Okay.
Since we're doing CDBG budgeting stuff.
Yes, sir. Anybody else? All those in favor? Opposed? Yeah, I'm all present. Okay. Number 4, review fiscal year 2024 planning budget in the amount of $89,560 and entertain a motion to vote to submit to the council as presented.
So moved.
Second.
So for this budget, we've essentially level funded with the exception of the move of the GIS mapping software costs from PEG's budget and economic development to mine and planning, and 2% COLA. Other than that, everything else we've level funded just across the board. This covers both myself and the planning board. If you'll see, obviously, a lot of our like conferences and meetings and things like that are a bit lower this year. Again, still same thing due to COVID, but those are changing slowly, where more meetings are becoming in person, where there's a cost versus being free because they were online via Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever. So,
And this was part of that mapping part was the
That was-
ARPA funds that we all paid
Yes.
for too, right? And this
Yep.
is on the cost now?
yes, yep.
Any questions? Yes, Stevie?
$50 for office supplies, that's it for the year?
That's it. That's all I got.
Cheap.
Because it's a shared office. Oh, you share, okay, so, all right.
I buy pens, she buys Post-it notes,
Okay, I was just
I
looking.
like the team concept. That's
Yeah,
all.
there's a.
Yeah,
I will just recommend that some towns actually, the town hall will buy a bunch of supplies
Yes.
and put it in one area so people can rate it.
Yep.
Instead of taking it out of their budget, usually through free cash or something like that. Anyways, all right, any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous, all present. Number 5, review fiscal year 24 Conservation Commission budget in the amount of 1,000. Entertain a motion to vote to submit to council as presented.
So moved. Second.
Okay?
Again, same basic concept, level funding from last year. There are two conferences, the MACC conferences that the commissioners typically will go to both in the fall and the spring. And then there's various lunchtime, short hour-long meetings or conferences that are throughout the year that sometimes have a minimal cost of like $20 or something like that. So we just level funded again this year, and hopefully with the announcement that went out at the council meeting about the need for new members, I'll have more than 3 members, and if I have more than 3 members, we'll be able to send people to those conferences so that they can learn. There's a great introductory conservation commissioner course that happens during those meetings where they can kind of learn just what it means to be a commissioner, what your roles and responsibilities are, and all of those things, and kind of the basics of wetlands protection in Massachusetts.
Questions? I know before, I think it was like $500, and then they
Yes.
we bumped it up, and it
We
looks
bumped
like
it
you're
up,
using
I
it now.
think, about 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to use it, so that's good to see it. All right, any other questions? Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous of all present. Fiscal year 2024 zoning board of appeals budget in the amount of $250, and entertain a motion to vote to submit to council as presented.
So moved.
A second.
Oh, you guys are messing me up now. I'm gonna have to change all this stuff up when I pay. Cut and paste. All right, here we go.
I could have a smaller budget, but I don't think I actually could. Essentially, quite frankly, if I have to use that budget, it's really just in case I have to cover an ad cost. That's really is about the only thing that budget will be used for. Or potentially to send a member to a citizen planner training collaborative. There's a lot of overlap between that group and the ZBA with as far as how to run a meeting or how to read plans and things like that. 2 years ago, we had an alternate who took advantage of that and actually went to a couple of those classes. I believe the cost was about $120, leaving me with $125 for the rest of the year. So.
Discussion. Dee Dee?
So Eric, you're the overseer of the conservation and the
Yes.
Board of Appeals?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Master of all. All right, any other discussion?
Trying to keep up with you.
Yeah, I know. All those in favor? Opposed? 5-0.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All, speaking too fast for me. All those in favor? Opposed? Done.
14 minutes ago.
I called it as a